Hola, buen dia. It's me, Peppermint. And when I'm not on RuPaul's Drag Race or simply being New York City's sweetest diva, I'm tuned into the fabulously empowering Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice Power Hour, coming to you every weeknight at 7 p.m. live from our good old friends at the BRCSJ Virtual HQ via their Facebook page. Tune in tonight.
Need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers.
Social justice, power hour, power hour, power hour. Social justice, power hour, power hour, power hour.
Good evening to our friends on the East Coast, good afternoon to our friends in the West, and good in-between time to our friends in those in-between spaces. Welcome, 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 my friends. Welcome to the Social Justice Power Hour. Welcome to the virtual headquarters of the Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice. My name is Robert Say the Schreiber. I'm the chief activist here at the center, and your host for this evening, as I have been every single weeknight since the pandemic started. Over 400 some odd shows, and many of them very odd indeed. We have done now 400 shows. Is the other side of 400. Our 400th show was Friday night with Maggie Smith. What a wonderful night it was. If you missed that one, tune in. Go back and watch it, my friends. But tonight, 401, and we're so thrilled to welcome Jamia Wilson to our stage. We're thrilled. This book just came out. This book is Feminist, Intersectional Primer for Next-Gen Changemakers. We're so excited to chop it up tonight and talk about this book and everything that's inherent in it, and also Jamia's work throughout her career and her advocacy and her journey. Very, very exciting, folks. Very, very exciting. But we know also that Jamia has brought a bunch of friends and fam and readers and all sorts of folks to our yard tonight. So those of you who are joining us for the first time, as I said at the outset, we are here 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, every single freaking weeknight, and to entice you to come back to the Power Hour. This is just some of the highlights that are coming up. Tomorrow night, as we've done every Tuesday night as well, free and fabulous queer yoga for our LGBTQI community and friends and allies and family. Everybody's always welcome. Please join us. Be led to virtual nirvana by our queer yoga master, Jasmani. Come take a breath with us, both literally and figuratively. And then Wednesday night, our old friend Maurice Carlos Ruffin, straight out of New Orleans, The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You. This collection is just so incredibly moving and powerful and fabulous, and so is Maurice, so come for that conversation. And then Thursdays, all this month, we've been doing Throwback Thursdays, bringing back some meaningful moments from our 400 shows. Kiese Lemon, the creator of Doonesbury, Gary Trudeau. We've also got on hand Ms. Rosie Perez and Mr. Jonathan Ide, author of Ali, A Life, talking about the upcoming HBO documentary about Muhammad Ali. So we're very excited about all that. And Friday night, our musician in residence, our old friend, Jill Sobule, will be back. As she says, she spilled a big bottle of water on her laptop. She's got to get a new one, damn it, that's her words. So as Jill says, come on, let's help her out, as she's helped out so many of us in our community before. And then coming up next week, all next week, we're doing highlights from our 400 shows. We want to celebrate with you meaningful moments of all the guests that have been on. We've had some truly incredibly wonderful, beautiful people on the show sharing space and time and energy, virtual communion. So make sure you tune in for that. Then after that, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, 9 Nasty Words, John McWhorter. Speaking of Can't Stop, Won't Stop, there he is himself, Jeff Chang, everybody. And Kalisa Ray, Ghost in a Black Girl's Throat, coming back to us to curate a special evening of raising Black, Indigenous, people of color, queer voices. And finally, we're doing another in-person live event, very safe, vaxxed and masked, everybody. David Brzezinski, local folk legend, live benefit concert, September 3rd. You can buy tickets in the link in the comments. Please do join us. for the special benefit for the center, and to see a wonderful, wonderful local musician who has an international following with his wonderful folk music. And I wanted to say, just for the record, was never really a big fan of folk music until David Brzezinski showed me the gospel. So do join us. I think it's going to be a great night, and buy some tickets before we sell out, which we will. But tonight, my friends, tonight's a very special power hour. Jamia Wilson is a feminist activist, writer, and speaker. And as the former director of the Feminist Press and the VP of programs at the Women's Media Center, she has been a leading voice on women's rights issues for over a decade. And now she continues that advocacy as vice president and executive editor at Random House. Jamia's work has appeared in numerous outlets, including New York Times, The Today Show, CNN, Elle, BBC, Glamour, Teen Vogue, The Washington Post, so on and so forth. And she is also the author of a truly great number of books. It's actually astonishing, including but not limited to Young, Gifted, and Black, Together We Rise, Behind the Scenes at the Protests Heard Around the World, Step Into Your Power, 23 Lessons on How to Live Your Best Life, Big Ideas for Young Thinkers, ABCs of AOC. But tonight, she's here to chop it up about her latest inspirational tome. This book is Feminist, an intersectional primer for Next-Gen Changemakers. And we're all about that intersectional changemaking here on the show. So please join me in welcoming to our Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice Power Hour, Jamia Wilson, folks. Jamia, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is truly a pleasure, an honor, a privilege, and a delight all at once.
Thank you. Right. Likewise for me. I'm so excited to join you.
So, you know, it's always something for us here at the center to hear the word intersectional. It piques our interest. Our ears pop up. We're ready like a puppy going to the door. You know, our namesake, our hero, the man that we do our work for each and every day, Bayard Rustin, was basically the godfather of intersectionality a good 20, 25 years before Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term. So that's where we started in our journey together with you. But as I read the book and read more about the book and your career and what you've done, I was like, wow, this is just an incredible, there's so many parallels and so many inspirational things you've done in your journey. So I cannot wait to have this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So tell us, I mean, what I said in this introduction, which was robust, and it could have been a whole hour's worth of what you've done. How is it that you've accomplished all that, first and foremost? I think that's really important for our community to hear, how someone like yourself finds the time and the energy and the spirit and the inspiration to do all these things. How do you work that?
I really love the work I do, and I think I have a clarity about what I give my time and space to. It wasn't always that way. I think that it's an instinct, but I think that as I've grown older, as I've learned a lot about what values I have and which ones I'm really going to put more energy toward protecting, what kind of boundaries I need to set to do the things I feel called to do in life, it's made it a lot easier to get all the things I want to get done. And so I think it's really about clarity. I just have a clarity about the kinds of things I want to do in this life that I have now in this time and space in the planet. And that helps me understand what to focus on in any given moment and what things to prioritize. And I think it's interesting because I just wish that I'd fully embraced that earlier. I guess that's why I'm saying it. I've always kind of had that and maybe sometimes been admonished for it, punished, scolded as a child, even for saying, oh, this is, I kind of want to write right now rather than focusing on this other thing that I'm not passionate about. But I've always kind of leaned toward figuring out how to lean into what it is that I feel I'm brought here to do, my purpose, the divine spark. So I do spend a lot of my weekends or early mornings, free time, evenings, working on books or working on other creative projects that I want to do. But it's because those things bring me joy and purpose and connect me to ancestors or connect me to ideas that I'm passionate about.
I love that, and I just want to pull at this a little bit more at the outset. I really want to talk about the book itself, but I do want to talk about your journey and your work and how you get to it, because I think it's really important for our community to hear how someone like you that is so successful, which is just a statement of fact, that is so powerful, that not only do you connect with your ancestors in a meaningful way for yourself, but amplify those voices while it's doing it. So do you mind if I ask you the nuts and bolts of it, the real direct question of, you mentioned that you take the mornings and the weekends and spare time, et cetera, et cetera. But how do you really work out a schedule that allows you to do your quote unquote day job, do the writing and the amplification of others, and also make sure that you're engaging in what the kids call self-care, which is oh so important. So do you mind breaking that down for us a little bit, just so our community, I think it's important that when we have guests like yourself on, they can hear how you are not only surviving, but really thriving in these still very difficult times.
Yes. So one, I'll just say I'm still kind of learning, right? I think every year I discover new parts of myself, new ways I want to show up, things that I want to release, and then things I want to commit to and be more consistent about in order to add to more transformation in my life. And when I came upon a realization of, after a series of events and disappointments and challenges in life, trying to do it all, but feeling depleted, and then also having some physical repercussions from just trying to do it all and realizing, oh, it's not sustainable to be everything to everyone. It's actually like politically not what I believe around my body needing to do and be everything for everyone. And there's history around why that is problematic. And realizing, oh, what is it that I can do within my power to recalibrate in a way that I am directing and channeling my energy in ways that are nourishing to me versus ways that are depleting to me. And that came from a mix of good old therapy, which I fully support, want to speak about, because I feel in a lot of our communities, those of us who are in marginalized communities, there can be stigmas about seeking therapy and other kinds of support. And I will say that a mix of therapy and exploration, reading a lot about trauma, reading a lot about why hypervigilance is a side effect of white supremacy, racism, homophobia, colonialism, and the sense that you have to achieve yourself into being enough. Learning that and kind of understanding in my marrow that the antidote to that was really being in my purpose, doing what I want to do, what I feel called to do, and what enlivens not just me, but the community. That was a medicine. And so I just started to ask myself with every decision, every opportunity, every job I would look at, every way of using my time, if I had free time, will X nourish or deplete me? Also, relationships. This has caused a few breakups in my life of various different kinds of relationships, amorous or not. But I just have clarity. And it's taken me a long time to claim that clarity for all of the reasons I explained, because, people in certain bodies when we have clarity, that can really, really affect people who want to remain dominant in a top-down power structure. But when I started to realize, oh, I have real clarity about what nourishes me, what depletes me. I don't have to explain it to anyone. I just actually know this in my cellular memory. Yet I've spent a lot of time talking myself out of it because of social conditioning. And so when I got to that, I actually asked myself that, and I wish I could show you the camera here, but I have a little sign that I made, and I painted on it a sign that says priorities, eyes on the prize. Whenever friends come over, they see it. I'm looking at it right now. And it says, does it remove any current obstacles, physically, spiritually, work, or health? Does it help you write your books? Does it help you get free, either financially or supporting your dream and purpose of making a living through your strengths, your voice, championing others, and writing? And does it help you stay healthy and thrive? If an opportunity, a relationship, an endeavor does not fit into this list of priorities I'm looking at on this wall, then it's a graceful no thank you. So I really had to get clear about intentions, about boundaries I would set, and really think about, okay, life is short. And I know this because I've sadly lost people I really cared about young. So when I realized, oh, in this short life, every minute we got to make it count, it's actually made it quite easy for me to live by those principles and ask the questions I just mentioned of myself, and does it nourish and deplete me? And so I always say, when I have friends or younger people who ask me these questions, I also say, maybe your list looks different from mine, but to take the time, write down what your mission and vision is for your life, and create your own list of deal breakers and deal makers, and have that guide you. Let that be your compass. It never fails. And it can be hard. I'm grieving a relationship right now with someone who I feel like, I knew for a really long time, long relationship, but we've both outgrown it. And I realized, oh, it's really not in the highest good. It's really draining both of us, because it can't exist in a healthy power dynamic. And I can no longer be in a relationship where someone would require me to dim myself. So I've got to say a graceful goodbye. And that energy in that space is going to free me up to do the other things that I feel like I was born to do, right? So I know that sounds very esoteric, but I think you get it in your cells, right? I think we all get it. And it took me a while to wrap my head around it, because the Google Calendar doesn't ask you those questions. But what I've realized now is I channel those values and those intentions and those visions into the Google Cal. And so the way that translates into the tangible is, I sit on Sunday, have a cup of tea or a glass of wine, I light a candle, I have my fancy fountain pen here with very beautiful colors, and I sit with my journal, analog, and my calendar, and I look at what's happening for the week. I ask those questions, and I arrange what I'm going to do around it with a record on, and so I have like a Sade record right now I'm listening to. Actually, a record, just to say. And, just to really kind of make this a practice to say, what are the things I am going to commit to, because it's a part of my divine commitment this week. And so I am going to commit to writing for myself and no one else, not for anyone else's gaze, this many hours this week. I have all these other things scheduled that have to do with my work, my job, my partner, my parent, all of those things. But I'm going to, at 7:30 on these days to 8:30, before I get ready for work to start, be writing for myself. Or another one of those commitments, which is a fun one, and it has, no sort of financial connection or anything, because I think it's important to just share that too. The things that give me pure joy is, I do that for my church service every week at Middle Collegiate Church. Very cool, intersectional, powerful church. And I have that. And then I also have a French class. And I make time and commitment to go to church and to go to French, because those are things that give me joy, and they nourish me, and they fortify my soul. So whatever those things are, also make sure that not just the things that can kind of get you achievements or get you ahead in life go there. But for me, I don't think I could be making these achievements if I wasn't getting the fuel of French, just because I love the language. It makes me feel alive. It makes me feel connected to other people in the world who speak this language, who love this language. And then also my church service, because our church is just so radical and cool. And, kind of, I feel like the premise of it is love, period, right? That's what it's about. And so it just reminds me to live with love every week. And I need that to do all these things. So I just would share that, and hope that if some of that resonated with anyone, to just figure out, what are your divine commitments? And then what's the best tool to use to make sure you show up for them? Because showing up for yourself also as a practice helps you show up for others in more integrity and love.
I love all of that, and that could be a whole other hour. So I feel like we're gonna go into the after party. Princess will be proud. I can feel her already. But we're gonna have to have you back to talk about some of these other threads. But first and foremost, I want to say we're honored that we made it into your divine commitments this week, and thank you for sharing this time with us. But I want to, if you don't mind, one more poke into it, because there's also this idea that I have been contending with personally in doing 400 shows now every night since the pandemic started. And it brings me great strength and solace. People always say, how can you do it? How can you be in that chair every single weeknight? It brings me, selfishly, tremendous joy to sit here and talk to folks like you. But I also realized at some point recently that it was taking a toll on me physically. And it was taking a toll on my relationships. So I needed to figure out how to make it, as you said, sustainable. So do you have that same balance in these divine commitments, as you say, on what's going to be psychologically, emotionally, professionally, in the world of advocacy and inspiration and supporting others? Do you break it down into those sections as well to see what it hits? Because I think that's also important for our folks to understand. How do we say, I want to do that. I want to do that, but I really can't. Or, gosh, that's going to be great for my community. I need to do that to support others, but gosh, I can't. And those are difficult moments, right?
Yes. And I love it because I think, and I will speak only from the perspective that I think I have as an American, because I think that's also important. I think in America, we are taught to think everything is universally a certain way because it's what we experience. But because I grew up abroad as an American, I feel like that has broadened my perspective in some ways. And one thing I think as an American that happens is, the first thing that we are taught to ask people is, oh, what do you do for a living? Or, certain things like that. And there are certain other cultures where that's completely a private matter. You wouldn't discuss that right away. It would be not good etiquette up front to do that. You would you might not even share your last name or something like that early on. And I think a lot about that when it comes to how we value how we spend our time, because I think for the longest time, I thought, oh, I have to be spending X number of hours working or working out or doing output per day to feel like I've done something, to feel like I've productively profited from the day, right? And profit being like, the idea of that is what we've been taught. And what I've now realized is, because we're organic human beings, we're blood and bone, we need to be hydrated, we need to breathe to live, just like a plant or any other being. Those things can change depending on what our energy level is. If we're sick, if we're going through grief, if we're just going through a big life transition, like moving house, that's one of the most stressful things you can do. And sometimes what those commitments are will need to change or need to wait, given what we are experiencing at a time. So one thing I've adopted is a tool I learned from my friend Sabrina Hersey Isa, who's a brilliant, brilliant person. If anyone wants to read up on her, she's just amazing. Where she has these personal inventory days where she takes time, and I think it might be once a quarter, it might even be more than this, where she goes and takes a day and just really thinks through, where am I on all those matters of life right now? Financial, work, self-care, relationships, all these things, and does a personal inventory and evaluation of those things, and then navigates the goals and things that she wants to do within it. And so I've adopted that into my own work and then my own personal strategic plan around being able to have that kind of fluidity, to have some broader yearly goals, but also to say, hey, if in the end of this quarter, I feel like I need to change my goals because I'm going through a health issue, or a loved one's going through a health issue, or my dad needs to move, or, any of those other things, that I can adjust those and feel with fluidity, okay with doing that. And that's one of the reasons I do the practice of the Sunday check-in around my to-do list and all of that, because it also needs to happen on a weekly basis. And sometimes, to be honest, It can happen less than that. I had a lot of different curveballs thrown at me this year in my family and my partner's family. And we had multiple losses and health issues that we had to face. And there were things we wanted to do. And we had to say, okay, what are the really big, larger priorities around our lives? Family, health, this relationship. And what are the things that if they have to wait till 2022 and even 2023, we can put on a list of intentions so it's still there and getting percolated in the universe as something that we envision for ourselves. But how do we really kind of also honor that we might have to slow down right now? We might have to rearrange maybe some things we thought in our sights were going to happen this year. They aren't going to, and maybe there's a reason for that we don't understand yet. But these are the steps we need to take now. So I think I'm quite fluid about that. Now, in the work I'm in on my day job, deadlines are king. I do have to follow deadlines, but I also think, I have that in mind when I'm also thinking about my authors and the kind of grace that we all need when things come up, and how to also build in that kind of ability to, for whatever degree we can, spaciousness if life comes up. And so for us to also think about granting that to others is also important.
I love that's what a wonderful way to end that piece, to think about granting that to others. And speaking of, I want to say to our community, as we talk about this, as you and I talk about how we process and how we succeed and sometimes fail, that what we do is not going to work for all. And everyone needs to figure out these things for themselves, and also allow yourselves a great opportunity to fail, to fall short, to not be able to even create the goals at first. And once you do, not reach those goals. And part of that is the journey. And you should never chastise or feel badly about that if you can't succeed. There's always another day. There's always another week. There's always another month. As you said, we can look to 2022. We can look to 2023. We can look. It's not, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon, as they say. But I like to say, simply enough, it's a journey, and we can take our time. The destination is not the most important thing. It's how we get there.
I love that. It's so true. And because I think sometimes we could even limit the destination, right? That's a thing that I think about a lot. I just taught a workshop with Lisa Weinert, who I love, and she founded this wonderful community and practice narrative healing. And we've taught some workshops together, and we just taught our first in-person workshop in several years together over the weekend at Omega Institute. And it was fully vaxxed, and we were masked, and we did a lot of outdoor walking meditations and writing and that kind of thing, figured it out. But when we were a part of that experience together, it really led me to what you were just talking about, thinking about how to put that into living practice. How do we, what are the ways in which we can actualize this? And that was something that I tried to impart upon the people who were in the experience with us as well, to really think about, how they are carving out those intentions and commitments in their lives, and the grace for themselves and the people within their lives as well. Because I think writing is something that is so daunting for a lot of people to think about. But really helping us also get clear about what is it that we are seeking? What is it that we're seeking? And how do all of these things connect, our mind, our body, and spirit? And if one of these things isn't in alignment, how it is important to take stock and go back to the breath, go back to the moment, and take that time. And Lisa is such a great partner for me because she is a healer and a yogi and is trained on helping people with that. And so I think just us being together is also a good practice for me, because we bring different strengths to it. And I am someone who struggles with embodiment. So it's also kind of helpful for us to also show people, we might all have different things we're healing or working on as we're figuring out these commitments, as we're figuring out these practices for ourselves.
I love that, to talk about collaboration and partnering and leaning on others whose strengths are different than our own and whose weaknesses are different from our own, so we can both support and help ourselves and each other. And that's the very essence of community, isn't it? So that's a wonderful thing to kind of end that piece of our discussion and then move on to talking about this. This book is Feminist, an intersectional primer for Next-Gen Changemakers. I love saying the title. I'm kind of sad you're on the show tonight because I'm not going to be able to say that every night, promoting your appearance coming up. I might just say it anyway. I might just hey, by the way, boom. This book is phenomenal. And as we start to talk about it, I know folks in our community are going to be inspired. So you can easily buy it, even without leaving the conversation right now. We're going to put up a link to bookshop.org. We love bookshop.org because they celebrate and they actually donate to local independent bookstores. And what's even more phenomenal about it is when you put your zip code in, when you order, they'll find the most local of local bookstores. So you're contributing to your community, either down the street, up the block, or in your city, or wherever it may be. So this is the book we're going to talk about right now. And I guess the first question is, it kind of, to me, feels like a very, very obvious end result of everything you've done before. This seems to be the sum total of what's come before. And it's so wonderful in that all those other things were able to inspire it, were able to contribute to it, and then you were ready. And it is just almost a perfect thing in and of itself.
Thank you so much. That means the world to me. I first thought about this book in a very different way than it was born. And so I also think that's just something I would love to share for the writers and creators who are joining us today. I thought this was going to be a different book than how it turned out. And I'm so happy. And that's how I think we can limit ourselves, right? That's why it's also helpful to work in community, like you said, see other strengths, just be open to change, because I had a vision for this book and I liked that vision. I liked the vision I had. And I think that would have been a good book. And it was a vision for a book that just really argued about 15 ways that feminism has made your life better and why feminism's good for everyone and people of all genders and people of all races and people of all nations. But then as I was writing it, and I was writing it in this very sort of more distant way, talking about statistics, talking about figures in the world who did important things, and there's elements of that in the book, I realized, I need to talk about my personal story about feminism and the things I learned and the things I gained, but also sometimes the shortcomings and limitations I had, the things I struggled with, and put that in relationship to people who may have called themselves feminists who always didn't do the right thing too, but why the idea has prevailed and why these ideas and these identities and these ideologies that we as humans have been seeking to understand and live into are constantly evolving. And why is it that we also try to limit them as if they have to be one thing and either we're for or against them in this binary? Or instead, what does it mean to understand evolution and that it's natural and to support that? So when I started to write more of the personal things and they just started coming out, and I sent them to my editor saying, I know I said this is what I thought I was going to do, but this is what is coming out. I realized when she said, this is what it needs to be. This is what it needs to be. So I want to say that too, that I kind of in the moment realized that this is what it needs to be. And I want other people to know that too, that sometimes we're taught to fear that, right? I had this agenda. I had this assignment. It has to be this. And so for me, as I was also looking at the world and what was happening, also allowed myself to really say, okay, I know I had this agenda, but I also really want to advocate, and others, luckily working with others who really got it, this idea that, okay, if at its core, feminism is something that's personal for each of us, and I'm arguing that all of us make a sense of meaning for what it means to us as well, that I'm going to need to be vulnerable enough with my personal story.
That's extraordinary. I mean, just the openness to do that, because I know that many of us, when we start a project, we get so focused, like this is what it's going to be, this is what I imagine it to be, and it's not going to change. And to have that open road and to allow yourself to swerve, to actually take a left turn, even use, as we say in Jersey, a jug handle. It's a wonderful thing to kind of allow yourself that opportunity for growth. What I really dig about the book is, although it's purportedly a young adult book, I was so intrigued by it and informed by it. So maybe my maturity level is just that. But I think that it really works on so many levels for so many folks. And what I do really appreciate is many young adult books, many books like this that are primers or guides, often talk down, often don't respect the intelligence, don't respect what folks have done already in their lives and what they've been involved with. And this book seems to not only not do that, but speak to it very both implicitly and explicitly at the same time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for saying that. I mean, we were talking a little bit before we started about, just how growing up, I always looked really young, and, taking time in a society that I felt you want to grow up fast. You want to look like the girls in magazines who look like they're adults, but they're teens. That's kind of how I felt growing up in the 90s. And I always felt that adults were talking down to me, although I was very smart. And that has always, and so the writers who appealed to me were the writers who wrote for young people in ways that appealed to our innate intelligence and curiosity. And I believe my readers are brilliant and intelligent. And I have always written for younger readers with that in mind. And although I would acknowledge we all may learn differently, that we're innately all really smart. We get it. We know it. And a lot of what happens in society is that we're taught to question what it is that we actually really know. My mom used to always say, when I'd say, "Oh, I'm confused," she'd say, "You're not confused. You know." And so I thought about that a lot when writing this book. And I have had some, critiques in the past where there have been some adults, it's never young people, who will write in reviews that the books are only for children with a high, quote, IQ, which is also problematic and antiquated. But then also, oh, I think it's too high of a reading level. And it's never from young people ever. That is never a review I've ever received from an actual teen, tween, or adolescent reader, but their parents or sometimes educators, but rarely educators too, because they usually get it that the kids are really smart, who have said that. And I've always been really curious about that. What part of the people who would write that makes them afraid of a child or a teen coming across a concept they don't know about and then needing to look it up or get more information. Because when I was a young person, when I would read books that would be a little bit challenging, but they would bring me in, I would do whatever it took to kind of understand it because I was in it. So I do intentionally also kind of put some things in that I know are challenging for that purpose. And that's why the glossary is a really key part of this book as well. And the glossary really seeks to explain some of the broader concepts that, maybe on the younger edge of our readers. So, maybe someone who is 9 or 10 who would have this book might say, oh, I need a definition of what misogyny is or something like that. And then I have it in language that breaks it down. And it doesn't make it condescending or anything. It just makes it more plain and easier to connect. So I'm so glad you mentioned that because it's a peeve I have. And I think it's more of a fact that sometimes we feel like we need to limit what we think young people should know or explore. And I think it's more, to me, about giving people information in a way that meets them where they are, but recognizing their innate intelligence. And as a language learner, I think that's part of why the language learning is helpful to me as a writer. I need that too. So I will read books that are above my level in French, because that's the language I'm learning and have been learning a long time, for the purpose of really stretching myself. And it helps me gain new vocabulary, but it also helps me talk to people with more complexity, because I can bring up a book. I can bring up concepts that have happened, and it breaks the ice a little bit more than, you know, come to Pel 2 and something like that, you know? So I say that just to say that you struck a chord with me, because I hold to that. It's the one request that has been made to me sometimes from a very well-intentioned parent or two. And that's just not how I write to young people. And so I'm glad you get the drift that I'm coming with. I always believe each and every one of my writers is one of my readers is brilliant.
And they are, and that's really part of it too, right? Is if we lower expectations, that's where folks are going to meet us. But if we raise them up and we say, this is what you can do, this is what I know you're capable of, this is where I want you to meet me, they're going to be excited about being there with you.
Thank you for saying that. That means a lot. I mean, I remember I used to read Sassy magazine, you know, in its early years when I was a teenager, and my friends and I, that and this magazine Bust, and I still write for Bust now, and it's a feminist magazine. And I just remember hoarding those copies. And I think my dad in his attic, there's still piles of those magazines. I could never bring myself to recycle them. I have them still. They just talked about broad issues and headlines that adults were talking about in the context of teen years. I remember reading, you know, everything from early conversations about racial justice in the pages of Sassy, class issues, things like that. And being really happy that those were the articles that were being presented to me versus some of the other more mainstream magazines that were just, you know, giving me quizzes about lip gloss or how to, and assuming, you know, how to get this boy to like you kind of thing, you know, like assuming that that would be everybody's path and dream and desire. So I just think, that is really important. And I really write for my younger self in mind, you know, what was the kind of thing I wanted to read. And I wanted to read Judy Blume, because Judy Blume was talking about all the things that were getting her canceled and censored at that time. And those were the things that I craved as a young person. She was writing about young people who are exploring sexuality who didn't have terrible things happen to them at the end of it. She was writing about disability and masturbation, and she was writing about getting your period and questioning the spiritual path that's been handed to you. All those taboos that needed to be aired, and that shaped how a generation began to think critically about what they've been told versus what they really understand and what they really want to explore for themselves. And so I hope to provide that to readers. I never want to be prescriptive. I always want to say, hey, I'm telling you what I think. Here's what some other people think. Here's some disconnects and things that we may not have a clear answer to. What do you think? That's basically what all my books do.
Well, I would disagree somewhat in that there's a lot more inherent in what you do, but I'll let our community decide for themselves when they buy the book. And speaking of the book, I do want to say this, that what's wonderful about it is not only the writing therein, but there's wonderful illustrations, and the book itself is a work of art beyond the prose. And I'd like to give a shout out to the artist you're involved with, and if you would just introduce our community just right quick to who this person was and how you ended up working with them, because it's such a wonderful piece of the book itself.
Aurelia Durand is the artist and illustrator for This Book is Feminist, and Aurelia also did This Book is Anti-Racist with Tiffany Jewell, and I love them both. And Aurelia just has such a strong, bold voice in Aurelia's illustration. Aurelia is French and has origin of Ivory Coast. I was going to say Côte d'Ivoire because that's what it is in French. And then also her mom is from Côte d'Ivoire origins in France, and it's also French. And then her dad is French. And so Aurelia also, I felt, although she did the art and I did the writing, was a co-author of this book also, in the sense that her art reinforces and tells another story also, and the decisions and choices and discernments that Aurelia put into the work is so important. Also, at the time when Aurelia was writing this book, she was based in Copenhagen. And I think after we've had a couple of talks about that and a couple of different panels we've done with a few bookstores in the UK, I came to learn that, that some of those experiences of being an French Ivoirian in Copenhagen, Denmark, those things also inform her vision, her feminist future vision, the kind of diversity she wants to see, her experiences as an immigrant to another European country that's highly homogenous. And also she has a really keen understanding, I think, in a way almost better than our own, of how Americans are conditioned. And so it was also helpful for me to talk through with her certain things, and also sort of that, French, how would I say it? Just like that French ability, the French frankness, right? The French frankness, she has that. And so I've also learned a lot around just her impressions of people's responses to the books or her thoughts. And so when we were doing the process, even though she was at her desk in Copenhagen in her studio and I was here, sometimes I'd say to her, oh, who are some French feminists who inspire you? Who are some French feminists who you're reading? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? So I thought of her, and just the partnership of working with her also kept me accountable about keeping the book global. I really thought, oh, this book isn't just mine, it's Aurelia's. And to make this only a US lensed book, which could be kind of the easy, lazy route to go because that's so predominant in our culture, I always had in my mind, oh, Aurelia sees every page. Aurelia is a part of this process. And is this a book she's going to be proud to share with French friends? So I'm so glad you mentioned her and brought her into the room.
Thank you for raising up her name and giving her the that shout out. We really appreciate it. And I want to show a couple of pages now.
Thank
so folks
you.
know what we're talking about. This is a wonderful page about different community members who have, and what a great, even these four in and of themselves represent so many different communities, and the intersectionality that the book shouts out loud and proud. So I'm actually going to drop our logo for a second so people can actually see all of it. There you go. So you have Bell Hooks, you have Dolores Puerta, you have Janet Mock, and you have Gloria Steinem. And it's wonderful the way this is laid out, the colors and the experience of it all, and the quotes are right there, so you understand how these different members of our community saw feminism and saw what the movement and the word meant to them.
Oh, thank you. I love that you picked this one, because I was just thinking, I feel so blessed because each of these four people are people who I've been lucky enough in this life to meet, and who've helped shape how I think about feminism and helped me grow. And at different stages of my life as a feminist and as a human. So this particular snapshot just is making me feel emotional, because I don't think it occurred to me when I was laying out this particular list of quotes and sending it to Aurelia and our editor that this was a group of people I've actually met. That wasn't always the case in every portrait, but I really did want this also to be a love letter to people who helped expand my vision of the world, so that others also think about, who are the people who impact you. There's so many times where somebody says something, somebody does something, and it inspires you and it helps you grow. And I want to pay forward the practice of citing those people and giving giving credit and due to our ancestors and the people who are still here doing that work. I had someone ask me about it once because she said, "Oh, you're using quotes. Maybe you should just, just write what you think." But I want to say, no, I don't. What I think wouldn't exist if what they think didn't help grow what I think.
And it's not like you don't write and say what you think. It's just this. I mean, it's if we don't raise voices, if we don't amplify voices, whether it's someone as well known as and as celebrated as the four of these folks, or that little known inspirational community leader. Any way we do it is really important to understand how we're inspired, who brought us to the table, who invited us to the party, who has been with us on the journey, whether in front of us, on our side, or behind us. It's always important that we name and amplify those people.
I'm so happy you said that, because it always kind of floors me when people kind of give that feedback, and I think they mean it in a good way, where they're saying, "Oh, we want to hear more of what you have to say." And I want to say, no, I think that it's really important to me, and it's really important for, especially when we're amplifying marginalized voices, and that's, everyone who's in this book to some degree is included in that. It's important, and even more important, to make sure those voices are amplified, because they are so often silenced, appropriated, undermined. And there was a healing for me every time too. And with some of the choices, there's some other spreads in the book too, where there are people who I mentioned because they don't get recognized in some of the ways that the people who were pictured in that particular spread are. And it was important to me to say, oh, how can I put their voices in this, in a place where, as long as this book is in print, people around the world will know who they are and learn from them. And that was part of why I talk a lot about my family in the book. And my mother, who has passed away, was such an integral part of shaping my feminist vision and my feminist ethos. And so Aurelia also gave me a great gift by recreating some family scenes, but putting my mom not only in the past, but in the future. So there's a little march that we did in there, and I had a comment of collection action is powerful. And Aurelia put my mom in a picture of a protest next to me in a community, and there were people with masks on. And it brought me to tears, because it showed me, oh, she has my mom, who has left this plane, marching toward the future with us, as long as this book is in print. And so I just think too, that is so important, that when we write our stories, we're not just writing our story. We're writing about the people who helped shape how we think and how we exist in the world. And so she gave me a great gift too, with the visualizations of that, and, bringing alive so that other people could meet those people who they may not know their names, but who helped shape how I think and see the world too.
Love it. And here is another example of, I want to show 2 pages. This is, to me, the most fabulous Venn diagram I've ever seen. That's how I think of this. And can you just speak onto this just for a moment, just so we understand what the thought process is and what is being communicated here?
What I love, so I will give all credit to Aurelia, because I gave her a list, and Aurelia and Clarissa, who is also a designer at Quarto, the publisher who's done our books, and Katie Flint, who was our editor there. We had this idea for a visualization of intersectionality, but the designers, they came to this idea of making it have this shape. And what I loved about this, when they said, "Oh, what do you think of this layout?" was that the beauty and the joy of it, the celebration of all these identities, because it's in these sort of flower forms, and they're bold and they're colorful, but they're all overlaid in a way that they fit and they're connected, but they also have their separate distinction, so beautifully illustrates the intersection of identity. And that's what I love about how they did it. There's a way you could have done this with, sharp edges, or without complexity, or without different ridges, right? And the way they did it is, yes, these things can fit together, and sometimes they overlap, and sometimes they connect in this way, and sometimes they flow. And so you see that, and it brings a feeling that and that you understand. And so I love that. But when I gave them the list, I said, oh, these are the categories, but they really deepened it with their expertise to bring forth this art. And that made me think, yes, that is exactly it.
And
So
I love that there are open spaces. There's a couple of empty flowers, and there's, this emptiness that allows the reader to say, oh, that's my identity. Or in the future, this is what we've uncovered now, because we are, identity is so fluid right now, and we're wonderfully discovering how we can express ourselves in so many different ways. So this allows for that potential future as well.
Oh, I love that. And I love what you said about the open flowers. It's so true. I mean, even I think about just new identities that I'm starting to take on at this stage in my life. And that, or my relationship to other identities I've had, how those change with age. So I'm just rethinking now from what you're saying, you're teaching me, I'm rethinking how some of those identities fit together, even from when I started the book. And that's really cool.
I love that. And then this is, again, I'll drop our logo so folks can see this in full force. This is the page on intersectionality. And again, it's a double spread. So this the page that's directly related to the page we just saw. But I love that you raise Kimberly Crenshaw, and that here's the other pieces of those identities, of those platforms, of those ways of thinking and ways of feeling and ways of being that are so integral to how we all move forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think that I didn't know what was going to happen in the news media around the critical race theory conversation and all of the brouhaha that has come up because of that. And so I'm also really grateful to have this now, because I have had people who've become very confused by all of the spin, to really help walk them through this, to say, this is what this really is versus what you're being told. And I think that's very important too, that this is a tool that we can use. We can use these images. We want people to be active with these books. So I also just want to share that too. You can share these books, you can share these tools, you can, go to dinner with someone in your family who's saying, I don't know, I don't like what I'm hearing about CRT on Fox or whatever, and, help show them this book and help break it down for them, no matter what age they are.
Well, I think also it helps us in the language, even with allies and friends and folks that we purport to be, quote unquote, on our side. We are so indoctrinated by language that is being used by folks that are not so friendly, let's say. And we find ourselves using these words or using these definitions in a way that we have to then pull back and say, oh, wait, that's not appropriate. And I'm being indoctrinated just by hearing it. So I think that this book serves that purpose as well in a very important and impactful way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, gosh, I knew this hour would go too quickly, and I cannot believe we're at the end. You have done so much for so many, in so many different communities and in so many different ways. And I love that this book, again, is here now, because I think that this is the absolute perfect moment. It's not the end of anything, but it's very much the beginning of everything.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. And it really helps to hear feedback like yours, because what I hoped with this book is that it would start conversations and help people see that we need everyone's stories and books. I want to see even more books like this, right? I want more of this conversation. And the book has a lot of interactive questions in it. So I also just want to say, for anyone who reads it, that we love communities. So to do the book, do it with your book club, do it with friends, and answer the questions together. I go back a lot and look at those questions and think about what my answers were to them 3 months ago or when I started writing the book. And I'm just getting a lot of great feedback from folks who are saying, oh, I've, called myself a feminist, but I never asked myself what it really means to me or what my click moment was, or I have a section about when I first encountered street harassment after witnessing my mom experiencing it. And, I had some people say, oh, I hadn't really thought about how I view safety and how that fits into my understanding of what safety means and how it connects to my identity. And I think that's a really important one, right? So I'm glad that it resonates with you. And I think, I'm really taking seriously also feedback that I've received from people, and also thinking about the conversation it's engendered. And I was thinking about a really awesome queer bookstagrammer who reached out to me and said, I really love this book, but I also disagree with one of your terms. And so I said, oh, please tell me, because I want to know and I want to grow. And they said that they don't like non-binary, although they understand why a lot of other people use it, that they prefer misogyny affected. And that was the first time I'd ever heard that term. So I thanked them for that and have really been thinking about what that means. And they were saying that the reason they like misogyny affected is because it really focuses on the systemic impact. It focuses on what happens to anyone who has a marginalized gender expression. So I don't know. It's just, I want to share that just because I think for me too, as a writer, it was the start of a conversation. And even though, books it's long form, right? So I wrote it and I kind of wish I could go in and add to the glossary misogyny affected, right? Because I learned from that. But I also thought, oh, this is what I love, that readers are grappling with these concepts and then saying, hey, this is a thing you should have also added. And I love that. And now I want to read this person's book or zine or podcast about misogyny affected. Teach us more about this concept, right? So yeah, I'm just excited about that. I'm excited about the conversation.
And we're excited about this, and we love you for loving that. And there's one last thing I want to say. I know we're in the after party, and I've kept you and Principally proud. But one last thing right quick is also something else you're doing that's really important, I think, in your quote-unquote day job as editor and VP at Random House, is there's this thing where there's this real concern, a valid concern, that after last year there was a great uptick of Black authors, of Black voices, of Black publishing. And many fear that it reached a plateau and now it's going to dwindle again because there's not so much public attention and people don't quote unquote care as much, although that's not true, but that's the perception. So I want to thank you for being there each and every day and making sure that we don't plateau and we keep rising up.
Oh, thank you so much. And, it's been really wonderful so far. And I want to also say, I just feel every day excited that I can bring my values and commitments to and we were talking about that at the top of our conversation, to how I approach the work and how I approach building my list. And so I will say that, I now it's been 8 months. It's been 8 months since I've been at Random House. In this 8 months, when I look at my list, I'm very proud of the voices that I am championing so far. We won't see those books out in the world just yet, because with books, it takes some time. So I have signed some books. I just announced another new book today that we just signed, and I'm really excited about it. But when I look at my list and the people who are on it so far, we are amplifying on my particular list, a lot of beautiful and stunning voices who are also marginalized voices, Black voices, queer voices, women's voices, just lots of different perspectives, South Asian voices. And I'm excited about that as well. So I just want to share that to say, when I look at my particular list right now, I'm feeling really good about who who is writing, and this is and continuing that commitment. And I know that there are so many folks who are also in this work with me in my house, but also in others who are really committed to. I think that the zeitgeist that we all have experienced and are experiencing has changed many industries. And yes, we all need to continue to be committed and diligent in and continuing to stand for our values in every space that we're in. But I also really feel like there are a lot of other things happening in the world and happening in our culture that also give me a great amount of hope about continuing to see these stories. And a big part of it is also about the readership supporting and championing these books as well. So I also just want to say thank you for being a part of that, supporting bookshop.org, you doing that, supporting independent booksellers, supporting Black, Indigenous, POC, and queer booksellers, supporting authors, going to author events from our communities. And those are ways that we can each take steps to also ensure that we have more of those books that we need. And that's just something I want to share, that I think it's really important. And that's why I really try as much as I can when I have books I need to buy to be really intentional about where I buy them from, because that also helps us continue to show that our communities are reading these books and supporting these books as well. So I'm excited, hopeful. The work is always important. It needs to be done. It needs to be centered. But I'm feeling really good about being committed to the momentum and keeping it up.
I mean, it's absolutely perfect that you end by amplifying others rather than yourself. It's so perfectly you after having this conversation and reading a lot of your work. I would expect nothing less and am thrilled that's how we get to end the show tonight, with you saying, hey, it's not about me, it's about all these other folks, and this is what I do, and this is how I do it. And we thank you for what you do and how you do it. And we thank you for being here tonight, and we thank you for allowing us to be a small part of your journey. And do know that you are always welcome back to the Power Hour. If there's ever any time you want to talk about something of the moment, you want to amplify something, you want to talk about yourself or someone else, we are absolutely here for it.
Thank you so much. That makes me so happy to hear. And I love the work you're doing and love the legacy that we're building on, also in this very beautiful space. And just really excited to have this time with you, and love your shirt and love the joy and commitment and passion you bring to this work as well.
I thank you for loving my shirt. I felt like, as I said to you in the green room before the show, I felt like it's wearing the band's t-shirt to a concert. I felt like maybe it was too on point, but I had to raise up. Samantha B sent this, and I wanted to. I think it's fabulous, and you are fabulous, and this has been fabulous, and we look forward to more fabulous time with you. Best to you and yours, and much love and respect.
Thank you. Much love and respect right back. And I love the full circle with the Samantha B, because I love Samantha B and want to just say, that show is amazing. And I remember when I was at Feminist Press, they gave me time once before the show started to promote the Feminist Press to the audience. And I will never forget that. So I also just want to say, support Samantha B and her show. They're doing the work.
Big shout out. All right. We'll see you again soon. Be well.
See you soon. Thanks. You too.
So that, everybody, is Jamia Wilson. This is the book again. This book is Feminist, an intersectional primer for next-gen changemakers. That's all of us, young, old, or wherever in between. We need this book. And I implore you, buy one for yourself, buy one for a friend, buy one for an enemy who'll become a friend, buy one for your local school, middle, high school, local community college, wherever it may be. Folks need to be exposed to this, and most importantly, I feel, as always, I want to say this as I do, we want you to support Jamia, we want you to support the book, we want you to buy the book, but some of us can't afford to buy books, and our local library is the conduit that we get exposed to these ideas. So please call your local library and say, hey, do you have this book is Feminist? And if they say no, say, as a patron, I ask you to buy one, and then they will. And if they do have one, say, get another one. Thank you so much for your support. That link is in the comments section, bookshop.org, as always. Thank you for being with us and sharing virtual communion here on the Power Hour. We do hope you will come back. We are here every freaking weeknight, if you can believe it, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We are here for you. Please be here with us. Until soon, much love and respect, you all, and be good to each other. Be good to your families, chosen or otherwise. And most importantly, my friends, be good to yourselves. You need it, and we need you here with us.
We need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers.